Oh, morning, everybody. Charlie Landon here, moving home with Charlie. Welcome to another 5 Fact Friday. This one's going to be a little bit rushed, a little bit frantic. I'm against the clock, but there is so much to go through. This is all the facts from this week's housing news are significant. Some weeks there's not so much. This week there's a lot. Quick housekeeping. If you are listening to this on audio podcast, links to all of the sources from the facts that I am talking about are in the show notes of the podcast, wherever you're listening to it, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever, it's all going to be there. And that audio podcast will be uploaded immediately after this live stream ends. And if you're watching this live on Instagram, please be aware that I can't see your live chat on Instagram until afterwards. So if you actually want me to see your comments, you've got to watch on either LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or X. All of those places I can see the live chat in real time. AJ says, morning, Charlie. Haven't seen you in a few weeks. Well, don't know where you've been. I've been here. Even though I've been in different parts of the planet, I've done 5 Fact Friday every week without fail. But anyway, let's get into the 5 facts, and I'll do a very quick run through of them first. A quick overview for those of you who don't have time to watch all of them. But in a nutshell, fact number 1, mortgage arrears total is up 45% on a year ago, making it the highest total amount of arrears for 10 years. Number 2, construction output falls sharply. That's part of the GDP figures I'll come on to later. It's relevant for people looking ahead in the housing market. Number 3, and I've got a great graph from Alex Groundwater from Housing Stig on that. Fact number 3, the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, has put out its monthly member survey showing that market activity has stalled. Fact number 4, GDP figures came out this week as well, showing that the growth has flatlined back to 0% growth in April. Bad news for the government in the election run-up. Fact number 5, the government published their planning application statistics this week, and they've got lots of different metrics in there, but pretty much they're all down around 10% year on year, which is just bad news for the development of all the new houses that we need. And fact number 6, YouGov put out a poll last night showing that it's only YouGov so far, showing that Reform have actually overtaken the Tories in the polls, which is making this election run-up much more unpredictable and interesting than it was. So those are the facts. There are actually 6 there, not 5. I like to give you a bonus whenever I can. But now let's get into some of the detail. So fact number 1, which I had on screen when I started there, about mortgage arrears. Now, it is worth pointing out straight away that the mortgage arrears figure, the total number of people in official mortgage arrears, is still relatively small. It's climbing. The trend has been up non-stop for over a year now. The mortgage arrears climbing, starting to accelerate a little bit. And when you factor in the fact that there is this forbearance, now what I don't know is whether or not the mortgage arrears figures include those who are in the forbearance 12-month period or not. But any 1 month on its own, not a big deal. But the overall trend of this and where it's heading, and the fact that there are still a lot of people coming off 5-year fixes this year who are going to see their average mortgage repayments doubling, or their rate, doubling. I think that's a significant fact to take into account. The next fact, number 2, construction output in Great Britain. Monthly construction output is estimated to have decreased by 1.4% in April. So that's a month-on-month decrease. Okay, that is a significant one. If you annualize that, that's 15-16% drop in construction output. and the overall figure includes both new work and repair and maintenance. So anything over a 1% movement in a single month is a significant move. It might not sound like 1%, doesn't sound like much, does it? But actually on a month-by-month basis, on an industry this big, it is big. And here is Alex's graph on that. Let me just get that up to full screen. So what Alex has done in his usual brilliant way is he's plotted a graph of public new housing construction, private new housing construction, public repairs and maintenance, and private repairs and maintenance, all just residential housing. And if you look at that graph, you can see it's very interesting. That dark blue line that in the last few years has just taken off upwards is private housing repair and maintenance. And private new housing is the light blue line, and that was going up a little bit during the pandemic and then has dropped quite sharply since then. So there's a lot more work going into repair and maintenance than there is into new construction. And both on the public side, public maintenance and public new builds, they're both very weak, flatlining, trending downwards, which is bad news for new housing supply. That's the relevance of it, if that makes sense, to the housing market news. Excuse me. Right, so that was fact number 2. Construction output falls sharply. Number 3, the RICS put their monthly member survey out this week. I recommend, if you are moving and you want to know what the results of this survey are, I strongly recommend that you download this PDF. There is a link to it in the link to all my link sources below. It's also on my, if you're watching this anywhere else and you can't see a link, go to my website, mhwc.co.uk, and it'll be the first link on the homepage. You'll see it there, 5 Fact Friday link. And it's got links to all of these. Go and download this and look at the regional breakdown of it. As ever, national average figures are of no meaningful use to anyone at a regional local level, but they do give you a sort of indication of the overall health of the housing market as a whole. But local housing markets can do things wildly different from the national average. Always remember that. But recovery in buyer demand falters slightly amid interest rate uncertainty. New buyer inquiries see a modest dip alongside a general softening in momentum reported across the sales market. Now, I've had that confirmed very recently by agents who are actually behind closed doors saying to me, it's brutal, and the transaction volumes, actual completing deal volumes, which started off healthily this year, are looking to be tailing off, and they're worried, and especially because of the uncertainty around the election now, how much that's going to affect everything. Let's just get down to the couple of the headline graphs on here. I'm sorry I haven't got time to go through the details. But excuse me. Let me get this a little bit bigger on screen here. So this is national prices for the past 3 months. So this is not percentage change in house prices. This is percentage change in surveyor response being a positive or negative net balance. And what you can see is that it was coming back up from a very, very low sentiment in the last few months, and then it's dropped back down again. So the recovery that they were seeing in national prices is now going negative again. And then you've got regional prices here, and this is where you can see the wild difference. Scotland and Northern Ireland prices in the last 3 months have seen overall a positive move. Everywhere else except for the West Midlands and the North. That's the past 3 months. That's not what's coming. And then the next one, this is regional new buyer inquiries. Again, new buyer inquiries dropping negative again. Otherwise, it's a mixed picture around the country. New vendor instructions continuing to tick up, although slightly down on last month. But overall across the country, again, regionally, you can see up everywhere except for East Anglia, where they are new vendor instructions in the past month are down slightly. Agreed sales. We were really hoping that was going to start trending up again. It hasn't. It's sort of dropped negative again. That's not good news for anyone. Transaction volumes are the lifeblood of the housing market, of moving, of social mobility, and of the economy. Regionally agreed new sales in the past month, negative everywhere except for Wales, that's seen a strong uptick in agreed sales, and Scotland, Northern Ireland uptick as well, and more positive agreed sales. Now, this is the future price expectations. Northern Ireland, very strong positive price expectations in the next 3 months. Scotland, positive, but not as strong as Northern Ireland. And bizarrely, surveyors in London showing a slight positive on price expectations in the next 3 months. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's really bizarre. Everywhere else, the price expectations for the next 3 months are negative on balance. Okay, so that doesn't mean that you got to understand it's on balance. There are still some surveyors in those regions thinking that it might be positive, but the overall net of positive and negative is negative 10 or 20 or 30% across those regions. And they go into lettings as well. But just go and have a look at that, guys. Go and have a look at it yourself. If you're a mover, it's always interesting. Always remember the difference between what they're reporting the past 3 months is based on what they've actually seen happen, but what they're expecting in the next 3 months is just the sentiment survey. There's no actual hard data in there. So that was fact number 3. Number 4, GDP growth stalls. So this is GDP monthly estimate, April 2024. And monthly real GDP is estimated to have shown no growth in April 2024. Again, the link is there to the ONS website. Go and check it out yourself for the details. Construction and there were some quite negative, particularly negative sectors. So services saw a slight increase, but production and construction are both negative. And if you can see that, so production had a 0.1% drop month on month, construction a 0.1% drop month on month as well. Go and check out the details yourself on that one. Next one is planning applications. And this is, of course, a very strong advanced leading indicator on the volume of new house building plots, whether they're big or small, coming down the pipeline. And it's disappointingly negative. And there's lots of different little metrics here, but they're all roughly down 10% on last year. So they received 85 applications for planning permission, which is down 11% same quarter a year earlier. This is in the quarter 1 of 2024. They decided 79,000, which is down 9% from a quarter a year earlier. They granted 67,000, down 10% on the same quarter last year. So, and so it goes on. Very few of those are positive. They're all basically 7,000 residential applications down from the year earlier. Commercial, they've got those down from the year earlier. And this is all obviously not good news for the construction sector itself. All right. And planning is one of the largest sources of frustration and problem and difficulty in the overall housing market. And yeah, it's the first thing that needs to be fixed when a new government gets into power. So fingers crossed that's what happens. Okay, that was fact number 5. And then fact number 6 on 5 Fact Friday. We don't get hung up on the details here. 6, 5, 6, whatever, we're all friends. Is YouGov yesterday published a UK general election poll, and it shows Labour on 38%, Conservatives on 18%, Reform 17%. So this is that was the 11th of June. So that was the one before yesterday. I'm sorry, I've got the wrong latest one up here. Let me get the one up. This is the one I wanted. So this is the one they put out yesterday. Is that on screen there? Yes, it is. So this is the one that YouGov published yesterday. 13 hours ago. Excuse me, tickly cough. And look at this graph. The trend in that graph is what's interesting. The Lib Dems seem to be the ones, this yellow line down the bottom, actually making the biggest inroad in terms of taking away Labour votes. This light blue line here is where you can see that strong uptick in just the most recent week on reform. The Tories are flatlining down a bit. Green are dropping as well. So, but just that sort of overview picture there is interesting, isn't it? It's showing you a trend. Let's just get it larger on the screen. It's showing a trend there of what's currently happening. Now, trends can change, of course, but it's almost like Labour are throwing away their open goal a little bit, isn't it? If that continues over the next 3 weeks, if that trend continues over the next 3 weeks, then we're much more likely to be facing the potential of a hung parliament or Labour with a weak majority. And this is what is relevant to me most of all, because the efficacy, the strength, the ability to get stuff done by whatever the next government is, whether it's a Labour Lib Dem coalition, or whether it's much less likely a Conservative Reform coalition. But if you put Conservative and Reform votes together, if they choose to join forces, Conservative and Reform, they may well have. This is hypothetical. I'm not suggesting I think this would happen, but there's nothing that says it couldn't happen. If Reform and Conservative joined forces into a single coalition or did a deal to join and get elected together before the election, that would suddenly make it a very, very different race. And this is why it's interesting, because we don't know. I think the certainty of what the next government looks like in terms of its strength in the House of Parliament, in the House of Commons, is what's becoming less and less predictable by the day. I think that right now, I still think if it was today, there'd be a Labour majority, but not as strong as everyone thinks. I think the next most likely outcome is a Labour Lib Dem coalition, if there's a hung parliament. And then third most likely is, if they were to do a deal, a Tory Reform. See what I mean? There's all kinds of things that could happen here. It's suddenly getting much more interesting. What was a very boring looking election a few weeks ago is suddenly changing and looking much more interesting. Right, guys, that's kind of it for today. Do we have any questions relevant to these 5 facts? What have we got here, guys? Hi there. Nice to see you all. Let's put that back on the screen. All right, I'm going to accept this challenge. D Tech says, I used to be a huge fan of yours, Charlie, but it's clear that you've adjusted your content to cater primarily to your Reform followers just because they make up the majority of your audience. I don't know if you watched last night's live stream, D Tech, but I was singing the praises of Angela Rayner as someone that gets things done. I know that this is what some people are saying, but I can assure you I am politically neutral. I do not yet know who I'm going to vote for in this election, genuinely, and I will show you when it gets to the point of making a decision. I will go through my selection process with everybody, because it's really, really important. It's really important. I remain undecided, because I can tell you that what I want to happen is for a government that has the teeth to get things done. That's what I will be in the housing market. That's the way I will be voting. No matter who it is, that's what I'll be voting. And I'll explain my reasons for it. Has there been a sort of increase in commentary on what's happening with the Reform Party? Well, yes, but so there has been across all news outlets, because this is unexpected news and they're making inroads. So what else should I be talking about, DTech? I'm sorry, I'm pushing back on this. I can assure you, I have voted differently in the last 4 elections. I don't yet know. I haven't decided, but I will tell everyone what I vote when I decide what my vote is in this election. I couldn't tell you now because, frankly, every week things are changing. Every week things are changing. And ultimately, I always vote with my conscience. I vote in a way that I would explain. I've got 3 small children. And when they grow up and become politically aware and ask me who I voted for and why, I want to be able to tell them what my thinking was. So it's not true, DTech. I am not catering my content to anybody. And in fact, by being politically neutral, I piss off far more people that way than by actually taking a side one way or the other. So, and no, I didn't ignore your message, did I? I'm more than happy to take on challenges. I'm very, very happy to answer constructive challenges, and I accept that challenge, DTech. I accept that's what some people are thinking, but it's not the case at all. Overall, what I can tell you is we've gone from a few weeks ago what looked like a highly certain outcome that Labour would be in power and, in my view, not get much done, and therefore there would be no change in the housing market. And to me, that was very disappointing news. We've now moved to a much less certain outcome. I don't think the actual makeup of the Houses of Commons after this election are any longer predictable, especially because of how unpredictable the first past the post voting system is. And it's the number of seats that count more than the voting in the poll results, right? It's very, very complicated, and it depends on the geography of where this opinion polls are coming from. And suddenly, I can tell you guys, it's become much, much, much less certain, because with first past the post, it's heavy seats. Yes, you might get 15% in the polls. Sorry, that doesn't translate into seats. That's why the Lib Dems get a disproportionately higher number of seats compared to their poll ratings. They currently benefit from the first past the post system. But when you reach certain tipping points, suddenly it all changes and it all becomes much, much less predictable. That's what's happening. That's happening primarily because Reform have come out of nowhere and now are the fastest growing party in the polls. It's way too soon to call what that does in terms of votes. Now, I can also tell everyone that I do postal voting normally, which means that I've got to make my decision slightly sooner than if I was voting on polling day. For the first time ever, I'm now worried that because of how much will be changing the last few weeks leading up to the election, my postal vote, whatever I decide to do on a postal vote, might change by polling day. So it's all up in the air. It's all up in the air for me, very, very much. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, guys, I've got to wrap it up and hit the road. Thank you very, very much for your support of this channel. I hope you're enjoying it one way or the other. I will keep on reminding you that I am politically neutral, whatever you may think. And if you think there is housing relevant news that I'm not covering, that's what I would like to hear from you more than anything else. Sometimes I miss stuff, right? If I've missed something that you think is as important or as relevant, that's news in the last 7 days, that affects the housing market as much as or more than the things I've reported, I always, always, always want to know that. Whether it's good news or bad news, whoever you are, I would always like to know that. So do let me know. Otherwise, guys, have a wonderful weekend and see you on the next one. Bye, guys.